Oh, I thought Mom had a lot of money saved. I mentioned it, right? I've already told her to leave. What's the point of keeping her around if she doesn't have a job? She's been living here for 3 months, and my son and his wife used up all my savings. They treated me like I was just there to clean up after them. I had enough, so I quietly left. Then, my son called me, sounding really worried. Around that time, something I did became big news across the whole United States. My name's Astrid, and I'm 68 years old. I'd been living in France for a while, but my health got worse, so I came back to the States. When I got back, my old place was gone, so I asked my son and his wife if I could stay with them for a bit. Henrik, my only son, is 42 and works in an office. He and his wife, Linnea, don't have kids, and they seem to live a pretty quiet life. We lost touch while I was away, but I decided to reach out, and Henrik seemed happy to hear from me. I explained my situation and asked if I could stay for a bit. Henrik agreed, though I could tell it was a bit awkward for him to have me around. But the happiness of being with my family again outweighed any worries I had. I arrived at their house feeling a mix of nervousness and happiness. Henrik and Linnea greeted me, though Linnea didn't seem too thrilled. I planned to stay for a few months until my belongings arrived. We chatted about our lives and my time in France. When Henrik asked why I moved there, I just said I wanted to enjoy the countryside. Henrik laughed, but Linnea still seemed unhappy. We talked about my health issues, like my severe dizziness, which might be Miner's disease. After that, I went to the entrance to get my things from my carry-on bag. While organizing my stuff, I overheard Henrik and Linnea talking. Henrik was asking if Astrid could stay, and Linnea didn't seem keen on the idea. She was worried about living with an older person and how long I'd be around. I felt bad for imposing on Henrik and his wife so suddenly. I'm sure it's a big inconvenience for them. But despite everything, I'm really happy to be spending time with them after all these years apart. When Henrik was young, I raised him all by myself after losing my husband. We didn't have much, and Henrik faced his own challenges, especially with his health. Coming here isn't about making up for everything, but I wanted to apologize and express my gratitude. That's why I came to this house. It's disappointing that I'm not exactly welcomed, but I understand they have their own lives to live. I went to the guest room they gave me, trying to calm my anxious heart. The next morning, Henrik left for work, leaving just Linnea and me in the house. I was doing some crafting in the living room when Linnea approached me. She seemed bothered by the mess I was making with fabric scraps and threads scattered around. I apologized and promised to clean it up. I showed her the small pouch I was sewing, with a little green turtle design on it. It's a turtle pouch, I explained, sharing my love for crafting little turtle-themed items. But Linnea seemed uninterested and asked me to not hang around the house all day, especially when she's off from her part-time job. I tried to explain that going outside too much made me dizzy due to my health issues, but Linnea insisted on driving me to the nearby community center to keep me out of the house during the day. Reluctantly, I agreed. From then on, I found myself doing all the housework despite feeling dizzy and sore. Linnea and Henrik treated me more like a housekeeper than a guest. Linnea, in particular, seemed more focused on her phone and social media than on maintaining the household. That evening, when Henrik came home, he asked if I brought my bank card. He explained that while they didn't mind me staying, life costs money, and they needed me to chip in. I handed him my banking card from my handmade pouch, and he checked it quickly, only to find out that I had much less saved up than he expected. Henrik seemed disappointed and kept asking if I had more money stashed away somewhere. When I said no, he reluctantly agreed to keep the cash for now, reminding me that they were doing me a favor by letting me stay. Later that night, I overheard Henrik and Linnea talking in the next room. They seemed upset about my financial situation and questioned whether they should have let me stay. Their words hurt, and I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loneliness and sadness as I lay in bed. The next day, since Linnea had a day off, she drove me to the local community center, further emphasizing my feeling of being unwanted in their home. I opened my cargo bag, eager to continue my crafting in the lounge area. But as I reached inside, I realized I had forgotten the essential fabric back at home. I hesitated, knowing I couldn't ask Linnea to go back and get it for me. Luckily, my dizziness was under control that day, so I decided to take a walk back home to retrieve the fabric. Upon arriving, I glanced through the window into the house and saw Linnea with an unfamiliar man. They appeared to be intimately close, which made me hesitate outside for a while before turning back without entering the house. It became clear that they wanted me out so I wouldn't interrupt their affair. Back at the community center, my mind kept wandering back to Linnea and the man. I felt the need to seek advice, so I decided to call someone for guidance. From then on, I avoided bringing up the affair and continued interacting with Henrik and his wife. However, whenever I left the house, I would conspicuously place a red turtle pouch on the edge of the living room side table. 3 months had passed since I started staying with Henrik's family. By this point, I had essentially become the household maid. When I was at home, I had to do endless chores, and when Linnea was home, I was relegated to the community center. My savings had mostly been drained by Henrik, who had a gambling addiction and spent most of his free time on lotteries and slots. It seemed his fixation on money stemmed from the financial hardships he suffered as a child. Initially, I tried to intervene, but mentioning it always enraged him. 3 months in, I couldn't take it anymore. One night before a long weekend, I decided to bring something I had been considering. "Henrik, Linnea, thank you for letting me stay with you," I began. "Henrik, I know I made things hard for you when you were young by not having much money. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, but I'm grateful." I pulled out a homemade turtle pouch from the table, hoping they would accept it as a token of my gratitude. However, neither Henrik nor Linnea showed any interest. "Mom, enough of that. Are we really out of money? Think about the French account or something," Henrik interrupted. "I told you we are out of money," Linnea added. "Astrid, how much longer are you planning to mooch off us? Honestly, it's annoying." Desperate, I asked Henrik if he remembered Anders, who helped us out in our old apartment. But he brushed it off, saying he didn't remember and told me to stop bringing up old stories. Stunned into silence, I clenched the turtle pouch in my hand, feeling the texture of the paper inside. The next day, Henrik and his wife went on vacation, leaving me behind. I had already planned to leave the house after yesterday's conversation, so I quickly packed my bag with the arranged carrier and sent them off to my home in France. I also didn't forget to put the red turtle pouch into my carry-on bag. Leaving a simple note of thanks and goodbye on the table, I departed from the house where I had been staying for 3 months. However, instead of immediately returning home, after staying in a US hotel for a while, I kept busy with various tasks, expecting Henrik and his wife to contact me eventually. Sure enough, about 2 weeks later, Henrik called, sounding agitated. "Mom, what's going on? The turtle pouch, it's yours, isn't it?" he exclaimed over the phone. "Ah, you noticed," I replied calmly. It wasn't a surprise to me when I saw the news on TV about the turtle-shaped pouch. Inside, it was a check for $2 million. It was my way of saying thanks for all they've done and to apologize for all the trouble I caused as a kid. Some might find it shallow to atone with money, but I had dreamed of the day I could give it to them, saving up bit by bit over 38 years. Before meeting Henrik after a long time, I did some digging and found out he was in debt. He tried to pay off gambling debts with more gambling, only to find himself sinking deeper. He had a steady job, and I just wanted him to clear his debts and leave peacefully. But they refused to accept my gesture. They had completely forgotten about the kindness they had shown to my family and me. So, I decided to divide the $1 million check into smaller sums and donate them to charities and welfare organizations across America. I placed the donations in that handmade turtle pouch and sent it anonymously. The turtle pouch became a sensation, making headlines and trending on social media. "Isn't that the turtle pouch, Mom?" Linnea's son asked on social media. "Mate, so that means you were going to give us one filled with money too?" "Yes, exactly. That was my way of saying thank you and I'm sorry," I replied. "I've been crafting both the pouch and saving the money to give to you." "Well, you could have said that. We would have taken it. If you didn't want my feelings, then you don't need my money either," Henrik yelled on the phone, completely unhinged. "It's my money. How dare you deceive me? Give it back," he demanded. Unable to listen anymore, I pulled the phone away from my ear and took a deep breath. "All right, calm down. You're giving me a headache. There's one more turtle, and if you really want it, it's yours," I said. Henrik finally settled down, and we agreed to meet later at a cafe. On that day, I took the last red turtle in an envelope to our meeting spot. Henrik and his wife were already there, demanding the money before I even sat down. Silently, I pulled out the red turtle, and Henrik snatched it immediately, unzipping its shell. But inside wasn't a check. It was a small electronic device. "What the heck is this?"
Henrik exclaimed, confused.
He fiddled with the device, finding a tiny button and pressing it. A voice began to play, and Linnea, standing next to Henrik, immediately paled when she heard a voice recording. It was her voice, speaking warmly with another man that wasn't Henrik. Flustered, Linnea tried to snatch the recording from Henrik's hand, but he didn't let go. While they grappled, I opened the envelope and laid out several pictures on the table, photos of Linnea cheating with another man at home. Presented with irrefutable evidence, Linnea was flustered and kept asking why. Henrik picked up the photos one by one, examining them closely. Intently, I confronted Henrik and Linnea about the suspicions I had harbored since coming to their house. "Something seemed off," I began. "A friend told me I could hire someone to find out and even offered to cover the costs." Henrik was bewildered. "What's your problem? Why would you do this?" he asked. "Well, you're my son's wife," I replied. "It's sad to think family is deceiving each other. You'll understand when you're older. I guess fate brought me here to discover your infidelity, Linnea." Linnea was taken aback. "Have you been lying to me all along?"
Henrik demanded.
"Since when?" Linnea retorted. "You've got your own secrets too. If you're blaming her for cheating, you need to fess up as well." Henrik insisted he had never cheated, but Linnea accused him of wasting all his money on gambling. Henrik fell silent, and it was Linnea's turn to speak. "What about you wasting all your money on gambling?" she countered. "I only use the money I earn," Henrik argued. "And you have your part-time jobs, so you should have some money." Listening to their squabble, it was clear that this couple had somehow managed to keep it together until now. Neither of them had any money. "Tell me you weren't $80,000 in debt, Linnea," I interjected. "You've been giving all your earnings to your affair partner." Shocked, both Henrik and Linnea began shouting at each other. I was floored when I first heard the investigation results. This couple was on the brink of bankruptcy. "We can pay back the debt if we get Mom's money, so give it to us now," Henrik demanded. But I explained that I had already donated all the money. "The only thing left is this red turtle figurine," I said. Henrik's rage erupted. "Remember what? You're kidding me." "All of it," he shouted, lunging at me across the table. Other customers started paying attention, and the staff hurried over. "The $2 million is mine. It was supposed to be mine. Give it back."
Henrik yelled.
The police had to be called to restrain him. After they talked some sense into him, they kindly escorted me back to my hotel due to my concerns about Henrik's aggressive behavior. A week later, Henrik and Linnea's relationship had deteriorated beyond repair due to the affair and debt. They got divorced. Henrik, now single, became even more consumed with gambling, accumulating more debt. He was caught trying to embezzle company funds, avoiding criminal charges but getting fired. His outburst at the cafe was captured on video and spread on social media, making it difficult for him to find another job. Unable to bear the shame, Henrik cut off all contact and disappeared. After the divorce, Linnea had no one to rely on and moved into an old public housing unit, living alone. Just before I could make a donation for the turtle rescue, it appears my online post mocking my own turtle went viral. Linnea started facing harassment and stalking, which eventually spread to her part-time job and got her fired. Even the man she was having an affair with grew tired of her and left. Now, without any income, she's living on temporary assistance for needy families. After that, I returned to my home in France. Once I finished unpacking in my apartment, I changed into a dress with practiced ease. As I was reviewing some work documents, I heard a noise at the entrance. It seemed Anders, my cohabitant, had returned home. "Hey, Madam President, welcome back. How was your trip to America after so long?" He greeted me with a smile, setting down his coat and bags. Anders is 73 years old. He was a resident in the same apartment complex where my son Henrik and I lived years ago. Back then, I was struggling with poverty, having lost my husband and caring for a young asthmatic Henrik. We had no utilities, and with no one to turn to, I was desperate and considered ending it all. It was Anders and his wife, our upstairs neighbors, who saved us. They were our lifelines. Please call me Astrid. I'm back and look, I brought so many souvenirs, I exclaimed upon seeing Anders. Wow, all my favorites. Thanks. I'll take some to the storytelling event at the community center tomorrow. Anders examined each of the piled-up souvenirs on the table, his face beaming. After we had gotten back on our feet, Anders and his wife moved away for work. Years later, we bumped into each other in the city, and I began helping with a support program for the needy that Anders had founded. Unfortunately, Anders's wife had passed away by then, and we started working together as business and life partners. I've been leading the organization since Anders retired a few years ago. What started as a small operation by Anders and me has grown into a large-scale international organization over the past 28 years. Currently, we're focusing on supporting single moms and raising children. We moved to France a few years ago to study their advanced support systems. Although we became quite known in France, we're still not widely recognized in America. I plan to expand our activities there soon and wanted to spend time with Henrik and his family as just a mom before they found out about my work. In the end, I couldn't get them to understand how I felt, but that's their choice. Even if it was for a brief moment, I was happy to spend time as a family. I am now 68 years old, but it's just a number. There's still much I want and need to do. I straightened my back in my dress and began thinking about my international speech for tomorrow.